Does your life really flash before your eyes when you have a near-death experience? Research from America suggests a surge of electrical activity in the brain could be responsible for the vivid experiences described by near-death survivors. Oxford resident Colin Blackmore is a professor of neuroscience and philosophy at the School of Advanced Study at the University of London. He told me what this new research shows.
Superficially, this looks really very exciting. This group of researchers at the University of Michigan have looked at activity in the brain while rats are very close to death. So they've induced a cardiac arrest in 9 rats, deeply anaesthetized rats, so totally unconscious rats. They produced a cardiac arrest and then followed the activity in the brain using brainwave measurement to see what happens. And what they find, surprise, surprise, is the brain does funny things as the animal is dying. And the funny things that the brain does look a lot like what the brain does when a person or a rat is very active and engaged and awake, very alert and awake. And also looks like the activity that happens in the brain during dreaming. So their interpretation is, well, isn't that interesting? Maybe this is what causes those funny near-death experiences that people sometimes report when they've been very close to death and then have recovered.
It's quite a leap to make, though, isn't it? Because we don't know what's going on in a rat's mind.
Well, of course, we don't know what's going on in anyone's mind, really, I mean, physically going on. And this does touch on fundamental questions about the relationship between activity in our brains and what we experience, what we are. If this is the reason why people produce reports of near-death experiences, then there's something funny going on, because this only lasts for a few seconds. This intense period of activity lasts maybe 20, 30, 40 seconds, something like that. At the very, very most, it peaks at around 20 seconds. And yet, people who've had these near-death experiences sometimes give elaborate, prolonged accounts of walking down country roads, into corridors with lights at the end, meeting people, seeing angels, and all that stuff. So, did all of those experiences which produce the memories occur in a very compressed state of time, or are they to a very large extent just invented afterwards?
As a professor of neurosciences, does it bother you that studies like this seem to get more attention from the mainstream media than maybe what you would consider more important research?
Well, a bit. Although, we should never deny interest in science. I mean, it really is important. And if public interest in science is generated by slightly oddball stories like this one, but it persists and people become more interested in how the brain works on an everyday basis, that's good.
Professor Colin Blakemore from the University of London. Chipping Norton is literally the coldest place in the world. Johnny Mullins' winning goal last Saturday literally caused the Kassam Stadium to explode. The gig I went to last night in Didcot was so good I literally died and went to heaven. Now, what's grammatically wrong with those sentences? The answer is nothing. That's because the editors of the Oxford English Dictionary have changed the definition of the word literally, so it can now be used in a similar way to metaphorically or virtually. Fiona McPherson is senior editor of the Oxford English Dictionary. Good morning, Fiona.
Good morning.
So why the change?
Well, it's more of an addition rather than a change. The existing definitions of literally are all still there. It's just that there's this new sense, if you like. So it's just reflecting the fact that this particular word is used in a different way. That's all it is, really.
But yes, it's used in a different way. People are getting it wrong.
It's not wrong. You'll never get me to say it's wrong. It's adding an extra layer of meaning. I can understand why people have a bit of a problem with it, but when you actually analyse what's going on, I mean, if you say a book was literally 500 pages long, it may well have 500 pages, but the literally there is not adding anything to that. You can take that out and it still means the book was long. It's just here you're emphasising the fact that the book was that long.
What's the process in changing a meaning or giving a word an alternate meaning?
An extra one. It's really just about collecting the evidence for it. we'll only add a new word or a new sense of a word into the dictionary once we have evidence that people are actually using it in this way.
And you found printed evidence of of people using the word literally when they didn't mean literally?
Or when they meant this new sense of literally.
Yes, it's difficult to explain now because we've got two meanings for it,
1769 is the first example that we've managed to find so far.
And what was that in?
That was in a book called The History of Emily Montagu. And we've got evidence from Mark Twain, we've got evidence from the Westminster Gazette, which was obviously some periodical. It does go back quite a long way.
Level with me, Fiona. You genuinely do this because the English language is a living, breathing thing. You don't do it to get publicity and sell more dictionaries. Just every now and again you mess with us.
Definitely would never mess with you. I mean, this definition was revised 2 years ago, and if you'll pardon me saying it, it literally slipped under the radar then. I don't think anybody noticed. No, we don't do that.
Does that mean if we use a word incorrectly enough that you will eventually change the meaning of it?
Well, if a word... it all really depends. Words will change their meanings, and I think that's the thing. It's probably not that useful to talk about correct and incorrect. I'll give you a good example. The word terrific, you probably use all the time, meaning great, impressive.
Yeah.
Well, when that first came into the language, it meant terrifying, full of terror.
Did it really?
Yep, it did. And there's a point at which both of those meanings, I mean, that's now a much more rare example, a rare sense of the word, because this newer meaning has obviously come to the fore, and that's what people would always tend to think you meant. But there was a time when they were both in existence. So if you said, that was a terrific film or, I don't know, a terrific book, it could have meant either thing. But because one has now taken over and people perhaps aren't always aware that there was this original meaning, that doesn't seem to be one that particularly bothers people. But if you're bothered by literally, maybe you should be bothered by terrific as well. Not that I want to give anyone any idea.
There we go. There is another one that I hear a lot, and I'm told that it's used incorrectly, but now you can clear this up for me. The word enormity.
Right.
Now, I have heard the word enormity actually only applies when you're talking about something that's got a tragedy involved. So you could talk about the enormity of the Hindenburg disaster, but it is used to just describe something that's enormous.
Yeah.
So I've heard you could say the enormity of the Hindenburg disaster, but you couldn't say the enormity of Wembley Stadium unless there was some incident there. Is that true, or is this an urban myth?
Well, I'm just having a look at our definition for it.
Enormity. Great.
But the OED definition hasn't actually been revised yet. So this is the entry which would have been in existence in the first edition, which was first published in 1891, I think. And they're all to do with a gross or monstrous offence or some kind of monstrous wickedness. So that kind of fits in with what you're talking about there.
Yes.
But we've also got an example which says excess in magnitude, hugeness, vastness. And it says recent examples might perhaps be found, but the use is now regarded as incorrect.
Oh, so if someone describes something, because you do, I hate to admit it, but you do hear it on the news, you hear it broadcast sometimes, the enormity of it. You can say the enormity of the situation in Cairo currently, but you can't say the enormity of a desert in Australia, for instance.
Well, what I'm going to now do is have a look in our current English dictionary to see exactly what that says.
I didn't mean to give you work.
No, that's fine. That's what I'm here for. Yeah. It is today, there is a more neutral sense as a synonym for hugeness, if you like. And what we do say there is some people regard this use as wrong, arguing that enormity in its original sense meant a crime and should therefore continue to be used only of contexts in which a negative moral judgment is implied. But we do go on to say that it is broadly accepted in standard English. So it's the kind of thing where, in standard English, it's absolutely fine to say it. But if you want to be completely precise about the origins of where that word came in, some people may not. You may wish not to use it.
So the next time I hear it used in something official, like a news bulletin, to describe something that's not got the tragedy and the monstrousness to it,
it's okay.
It's okay.
Yes,
okay.
It's okay. Although some people, as you've just said, may regard it as non-standard, shall we say, rather than
and
wrong.
would those people be described as word snobs?
You could describe them as that. I probably wouldn't want to go that far.
So are there definitions in the dictionary that have never been changed? The meaning has remained the same through the ages?
Yes, there will be some words like that, but it's unusual to find words like that. I mean, if you think of words like wicked meant evil,
Yes.
it does, of course, mean
Yes.
evil, but there's also a strain of meaning now where it means the opposite of that.
Oh, yeah, it means good.
Yeah,
it
good.
was wicked.
Yeah, exactly.
But when a high court judge describes someone who's committed a horrendous crime as wicked...
I would imagine they're talking about evil.
Yes.
But you can never be sure, mind you.
It is all in the context, isn't it?
It is, and context will always help you with something like that, and that goes back to the literally. I don't think there's any genuine confusion when somebody says that, and it's just adding a little bit of, it's making it a little bit more exciting.
I think
a bit of pep.
While I've got you on, I'll get another thing out that I think there is a lack of nouns.
Right.
For instance, right, we talk about cattle, and a singular is a cow.
It is, yes.
But you can have a cow and a bull elephant. The animal is an elephant, and you have a cow and a bull.
Yes.
But with cows and bulls, there doesn't seem to be a noun for what that animal is that's not gender specific. I think we're missing a noun.
Right. Well, if you find a gap in the language, maybe this is your chance to, come up with something.
Do you mean if we came up with a word for the animal that we call cows and bulls, a word for that animal as a noun, and we got it used regularly, we could get it into the Oxford Dictionary?
Potentially. That is exactly how a word takes shape, really. Somebody, if we're talking about a completely new word, somebody will coin it at some point, and if enough people begin to use it, then that is how a word makes its way into the dictionary, or probably more importantly, enters the language, because the dictionary is only reflecting the fact that it's entered the language. So it's really about getting people to use it. But that's exactly how it would work.
So we need to come up with a word for the animal that we call cows and bulls, the non-gender specific word, and then we need to use it a lot. Like, for instance, on the BBC, that would count, wouldn't it?
It would. It would count as evidence, but it's harder than you think, I think.
It is harder? Well, we need evidence, but we could have recordings of people because we could just get callers to throw it into casual conversations. We could get newsreaders to use it.
We would also need evidence of that going back at least 5 years.
5 years? It takes
a while.
Takes its time, doesn't it?
Because a word, once it goes into the OED, it never comes out again. So therefore, it's about making sure that it's genuinely entered the language.
Because I've got another one while I'm thinking of it. Another noun that's missing.
Go on.
Washing machine.
Right.
We call it a washing machine.
We do.
It is a machine, but it doesn't have a name really. It's a machine, and it washes, so we call it a washing machine. It's because that's what you call things when you don't have a name for them. You know what I mean? We don't call a push bike a cycling machine, or a.
We don't. That's true.
So washing machine doesn't actually have a name, does it?
I think it'll be harder for you to probably justify that one, because I think people are probably quite okay with calling it a washing machine.
Yeah, and actually they're quite okay with cows and bulls.
Yeah,
I think
they are. I think they are. But we're joking. But that is actually how a word, would get make its way into the language, and then once it had done that, make its way into a dictionary.
Okay. Well, fascinating stuff. So where do you sit on the literary fence?
Well, I don't mind it, because
it bugs me, and it bugs the hell out of Phil Gale, who does breakfast on BBC Radio Oxford. I only kind of mentioned it that we were going to be talking about this morning.
He got all excited.
He I would like to say he literally caught fire, but he was.
But he wouldn't like.
He was not happy at all.
The thing is, from a lexicographer's point of view, so the job that we do, we've got to record these things sort of objectively and dispassionately, and if the word or a sense of a word has come in, regardless of whether we might use it ourselves, we're just recording it. So with this one, because I just see it in the same way as I see the fact that terrific has changed its meaning, or wicked changed its meaning, or added added extra meanings. That's really just how we view it. So it's hard in a way for us to really see what people are getting so excited about.
Fiona McPherson, Senior Editor of the Oxford English Dictionary. Good to talk to you. Thanks for coming on this morning.
My pleasure.
BBC Radio Oxford.
Oxfordshire News, Oxfordshire Life.
Graham Mack.
BBC Radio Oxford.